It is now recording. Okay, so for the purposes of the recording, this is welcome to the Los Angeles Clojure Meetup on the 14th of July, 2021. Good evening to all that are in the western of half of the United States, but good morning and good day and other things to people that are other places. Maybe could we go around and just do a quick intro for each person?
Okay.
I will start, and then when you are done with your quick intro, mention the next person, and we'll make sure that everyone gets covered. So I'll go first. My name is Nate Jones. With Dorab and Tyson, we organized this meetup together. I've been working in Clojure for 3.5 years professionally, but I've been a hobbyist for many years before that. Clojure is awesome, and I love it. All right, why don't you go ahead, Dorab?
Hi, I'm Dorab Patel, and I've been using Clojure for about 5 years, but I've been doing Lisp for a lot longer in general. Sean.
Okay. Yeah, so hi, Sean. I've been doing Clojure in production now for about 10 years, just over 10 years, and about a year dabbling before that. And I love Clojure, and I ended up maintaining a lot of open source projects, so you'll run across my name on a bunch of stuff. So feel free to hit me up whenever you run into bugs or questions. How about Philippe?
Hello, I've been doing Clojure for a little over 10 years too, and I have some things in production. And yeah, I like the language. I went to many Clojure cons like 10 years ago, 9 years ago, and now yeah.
Where are you from, Philippe?
I live in Mexico. And right now I live in Mexico in the West Coast, in a little town very famous for the American retirees, which is called Ajijic. I think it's the second largest American foreigner retirees place in Mexico. I think we have like 18,000 gringos here, so yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so yeah. I will say next because I can see the name. Okay, Jacob.
Hi, I'm Jacob. I'm a report writer, data wrangler at USC, and I think I hobbied Clojure for 4 years and snuck it in at work for about 5 now.
Awesome.
Cameron.
Hey there, I'm Cameron. I've been doing Clojure for probably about 10 years now, just under maybe 7 years in production. I run a little fintech startup that's all Clojure, ClojureScript, and Datomic. So very interested to talk about Juxt. I'm interested in kind of the bitemporality aspects of it and more. So happy to be here. And Jay, I think, is not gone yet. I'll call Jay.
Hi, I'm a Clojure hobbyist. I've been playing around with Clojure for about a little under a year. And I did a little bit of the Crux tutorial, the other Crux tutorial before, and looking forward to learn more today. I think I will call Chase.
Chase said in the chat that he will only be on chat tonight, so he may not be able to join, but he is joining from Medellin, Colombia. Very
Medellin.
Cool. Medellin.
I have a customer there also.
Very cool. It's an intercontinental meetup. You know, that's pretty cool.
Oh
yeah. Cool. And then the last, I think, is
I am late. You can call me Shekhar. Yeah, hi, my name is Chandrasekhar. and I have been doing Clojure for a couple of years now. I got introduced to Clojure at work, where I used to work with different technologies, and I have gone through the Crux tutorial and looking forward to learn more. Means I come from background of database, so I I'm not able to figure out bunch of things because I see in that way in the data,
Gotcha.
in that side of things with Crux. So looking forward. Back to you.
Cool. All right. I guess now we just gotta. All right. Anybody up for being the first driver? Sean, would you mind being first?
I don't really have a good setup for it because I'm doing the Zoom on my laptop, but that's not where I do my browsing and other stuff. So.
Gotcha. I understand. Anybody else? If not, I can do it. I can.
So what's it gonna? I think yes, please do it so that you can show us what you think it'll look like.
Sorry. Let's see here. So what I was thinking, we just I'll share my web browser, and then we just here make it up here. Let's a little bigger. Everyone see that? Okay.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah.
Let's see. If we can all read, but let's start reading. I'll just read along and we can all follow along. So Learn Crux Datalog Today is derived from the classic tutorial materials, but adapted to focus on the Crux API and unique data log semantics, and extended with the additional topics and exercises. It is an interactive tutorial designed to teach you Crux, the Crux dialect of Datalog. Datalog is a declarative database query language with roots in logic programming. Datalog has similar expressive power to SQL.
Nate, I'm not sure.
Yes.
Should we talk a little bit about the new things in the Clojure ecosystem before?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I got too excited about Crux.
I thought that was the teaser to keep us, till the end. But
I couldn't somehow get myself unmuted while you were talking.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm up for. We can chat about cool stuff from Clojure, the Clojure community. Here, I'm going to share.
I guess the tools build is probably the biggest announcement.
Yep.
Yeah.
Very excited about that finally being out.
Is it? My big question was like, is it going to replace? The name is blanking on me. The Uber, the jar builder.
No.
Star.
No.
Star.
It doesn't. I mean, the interesting thing with tools build is it's a library that has sort of common build-like tasks in it. So it's got copy directory, copy file, write POM. It does have jar and Uber. I've sort of been chatting with Alex on and off as tools build has been built in the background, and talking to him specifically about some of the stuff that DepStar has had to do. If you are using multiple libraries that all depend on log4j2, for example, those libraries will typically have a plugins cache file called log4j2 plugins.dat. And there is a Maven plugin that knows how to merge those across multiple libraries when you're building an app. And if you don't merge them, your log4j2 configuration will be broken in your built app. So that is something that I added to Depstar a good while ago. I'm pretty sure it isn't in Tools Build. So there's a ton of stuff that Depstar does that Tools Build's jar and Uber don't. I have already released a new version of Depstar that provides API compatible jar and Uber tasks. So, and I also just completely revamped the docs on Depstar. So you can use Depstar with Tools Build, and you can use all the Tools Build tasks and then use Depstar just for the jar and Uber part if you want. But I mean, if you're not using any of the fancy features, you can just go ahead and use the built-in stuff. So Tools Build, I think, is a great step. I think it'll take people a little while to kind of get used to the idea of, oh, we have to have a Clojure script that we run with Clojure -X to do some of this stuff, or Clojure -T, which is the other big new piece, which is the tools support in the Clojure CLI. It now provides machinery to deduce a GitHub URL from a library coordinate, find all of the available versions and install it as a local tool, so it doesn't have to go in your deps-EDN. And the idea is that libraries that are meant to be used as tools will add a line to their deps-EDN file called tools usage that specifies the default namespace and any namespace aliases they want. And so I've done that for CLJ New and Depstar, so you can install both of those using Clojure -T tools install, and then the library coords. And the tools stuff lets you list what tools you've got installed, show details about them, remove them, obviously, and run them. And then the tools deps alpha itself, the underlying library behind those, has also been updated to make it easier for source libraries to be used. So if you're using something via Git URL and you use the very latest pre-release of the CLI, which has the latest tools deps in it, you will be able to just specify the library coordinate, the tag, and the SHA prefix. You won't need to also specify the Git URL. It'll deduce that. And you don't need a full SHA anymore. But what it will do is it will go find the tag and make sure that that matches the SHA prefix to make sure that you're pulling down the right version, because tags can move. And so that makes it a fair bit easier to use source libraries direct from GitHub. The other thing that they've brought in with it is the idea of a library that can be prepped. And that is some step that's needed before the library can be used, such as, for example, if you have a Clojure library that has some classes that need to be gen classed before you can use the library, you can set that up with a build step in your library and specify deps prep lib, I think, is the key in deps-EDN. And then when someone uses your library, they won't be able to run it until they've run the prep step, and they can say Clojure -X deps prep, and it'll prep any and all libraries that it's downloaded that need preparation. So that's kind of nice. And you'd be able to use a full tools build script to do that. So you could have Java code in your library and it could compile all the Java code. And it only does it once, and then it's set up in the GitLib's cache. And it has to be explicit. So you can sort of double check what the libraries would do, because you can look at their prep lib step. And it doesn't just automatically run code when it downloads it from GitHub. You've actually got to say, yes, please prep my libraries. So I think that's covered the main things that are in the new Clojure CLI and tools build and the tools library, which underlies the Clojure -T option. So it's a lot of nice changes. There's already been some feedback on Slack. Things like, for example, you can't prep a library that's brought in under an alias for extra deps. Alex has said that'll get fixed by next week, probably. There's some questions around the new help doc and help dia options. In theory, you should be able to say Clojure -x deps help doc and specify a namespace or a fully qualified function, and it'll display the doc strings of the namespace or the function, or you can get a list of all the public variables in a namespace. But there's a little bug in it right now where if it's not already on the class path, if it's not already required, you can't do it. So it actually has to be kind of preloaded, but I'm sure that'll get fixed too. So a lot of great new stuff. I would really strongly encourage everyone, if you are able to install the pre-release and kick the tires, try out tools.build, try out the new CLI features, and provide Alex with as much feedback as you can.
Cool. Yeah, that tools depths channel is pretty active. There's a lot going on in there. So yeah, Clojure and Slack.
And I see Chase has asked if the tools setup will be as portable. Yes, in fact, it's just a directory with some EDN files. And if you go to GitHub under my account and look at my .clojure repo, you'll see that there's now a tools folder in there with new depstar and the tools EDN itself. And so you are able to copy that directory of EDN files around from machine to machine. And as soon as you reference the tools, it installs them all and sets them all up. So you can have the exact same tools installed on any machine you want.
Does that mean also that depstar is now a tool and, therefore doesn't have to be included everywhere?
You can indeed install it as kind of a global dev tool. And so it's available everywhere. There's some stuff around usability that I think they're going to have to address. If you have an alias in your project, you can specify exec arguments, so you can have defaults. If you have it as a tool, there's no defaults. So, because obviously it's global across all your projects. So you would have to either specify the arguments explicitly yourself, or in theory, you ought to be able to specify an alias with the tool, I think, but right now that doesn't seem to work. So that's probably another area where once people start trying this, there'll be some feedback where people will want to say, well, I want to run a tool, but I want to also have it pick up some aliases in the project basis. And therefore you can have exec args in aliases, so you can actually have multiple aliases and all the exec args will merge.
Great. Well, thank you.
Cool. Thank you for the very thorough. That was great.
Well, we're already using it, as you can imagine, at work. I've just vendored in the latest pre-release of the CLI today, and tomorrow I'll be updating our build script at work to actually use tools.build instead of tools-deps alpha. So
does that mean you're back from your vacation?
I am. I got back well, I didn't go anywhere, but yeah, I'm back from my vacation as of last night.
Well, that's cool.
Nice.
Were there other newsworthy items anybody wants to bring up or discuss?
There's a new version of Babashka out today, just released a few hours ago. And it's got a lot of fixes, but one of the cool new things is that Clojure tools logging is included now, along with Timber. And so you can do logging in your scripts. So I think that there's more than one person out there, myself included, who are building more than just small scripts in Babashka. And so the ability to log and tune logging is really cool. And it also, there's a new thing in Selmer, the templating language that's included, that allows you to interpolate local variables into the template. I haven't used it, but that was one of the other major new features in Babashka 5.050, the big 050 today. So that's a big thing.
The rate of change in Babashka is, positively good.
I'm pretty sure there's more than one person in, like, I don't. The other thing is was it last week that the history of Clojure talk by Rich Hickey was released?
Yes.
I've only watched the first like 5 or 10 minutes, but it's just fun hearing him talk about stuff. So,
and I liked the ending of it also, where the question answered at the end from
that was good.
moderated
I
by
read
guys
the paper.
Too.
Yeah, I read the paper a while back, so there wasn't a ton of new information in the video until that. The question and answer was definitely nice, but if you haven't read the paper, it's a fantastic video. It's what you'd expect from Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've only watched like 10 minutes, but you just like listening to someone who's with that much experience, just the way that he talks about things, it's like, you know, he understands so many things, and it's just a lot of the comments that he makes are like, oh yes, that is true. Like it's like he's just saying it, which is great. Anybody else got anything? I've got another one.
Okay, go ahead.
Foreclosure is going away apparently, and so there's a few people, including Work Dude, that are making they've made a replacement for it. It runs in the browser using Sci, so that's really cool. And the mailing list, actually, where it was announced, there might be another official version of Foreclosure that comes out too. So I don't know, but Foreclosure is a really great resource for learning once you get past the like cones or something like that. So it's good to see it living on. I'll put a link in the chat where it's currently, the new one is currently, or one of the new ones. Apparently there's more than one new one. That's just the one that's the farthest along.
Okay. You want to pick up where you left off?
Yeah, sure. Let me just get my stuff in the right window, in the right place. Yeah, there it is. There we go. All right. Everyone see it okay?
Yes.
Cool. Let me get the chat up so I can see that. I love how Slack, like, once you start sharing, it's like, you don't need to see the controls anymore. They're hidden off somewhere. One second. Apologies, Mike. There we go. Okay. All right. So we see, does everybody have a copy of this? Everyone able to remix? So a runtime setup. So it looks like we have the Juxt core here, and that's all that we need. I think the tool dep alpha here is for completion or something like that. Anyway, so we need to have Crux up and running before we can use it. Here we're using Clojure on the JVM, running Crux locally as an embedded in-memory library. However, the Datalog query API is identical for all clients. And these queries would work equally well over the network via HTTP and via the Java Clojure client library. All right. So I think it's Control Enter for me. Yeah. I don't know what the Mac equivalent is, but I'm on Windows. And it's been long enough that it needs to boot up Clojure, so.
That's small button on the right works as well. So.
Yeah. All right, well, that's booting. I'm going to keep reading. Next, we need some data. Crux interprets maps as documents. These require no predefined schema, only an valid ID attribute. In the data below, which is using Eden, fully explained in the section, we are using negative integers as IDs. Any top-level attributes that refer to these integers can be interpreted in an ad hoc way and traversed by the query engine. This capability is known as schema on read. Interesting. So this is negative 100 here. So is there a place that that's referenced? Lots of negative numbers. Oh, here you go. Interesting. So these would be like the foreign keys then, I guess.
Yeah, it looks like.
The vector of maps contains two kinds of documents related to people, actors, and directors, and documents related to movies. As a convention to aid human interpretation, all persons have IDs within the 100 range. All movies have IDs in the 200 range. Many ID value types are supported, such as strings and UIDs, which may be more appropriate in a real application. Oh, so I wonder if that's going to be the actual ID in the database. Like, it's not going to replace it with something else.
And do you know if it's just strings and UIDs, or could it be something else, like a keyword? Oh yeah.
I would assume keywords. I mean, so strings and UIDs and now integers. So I assume that keywords are probably supported.
I'm thinking maybe those negative numbers are just like temporary IDs inside of this transaction, you know, in the way that you can use an arbitrary string like into Atomic, and then it gets kind of solidified into a real ID later, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was surprising, because I remember I've gone through the Atomic tutorial, and they have like a placeholder ID that gets turned into a real one. That's what I thought when I first read that, but we'll have to see.
This is a temporary entity for each of these records, so that you can make relations, and then when you submit the transaction, everything will get the real ID.
I don't know, because I've jumped ahead a little. I ran a query that shows the IDs that it thinks are in the DB, and they all come back with those negative numbers. So I think that's actually the real ID. I suspect if you don't specify a Crux DB ID, it allocates one, but I don't know.
Yeah, that is interesting. Okay, so I evaluated this. Is it just a def? Yeah, def my user my docs. Note that Crux also has a JSON over HTTP API that naturally supports JSON documents. This is possible because JSON can simply be mapped to a subset of Eden. To start an in-memory version or instance of Crux, you can use the start node function.
Sean, at least in the paragraph above, it says these require no predefined schema, but only need a valid ID attribute.
Okay, so I guess they don't auto-allocate one. Interesting.
Yeah. Loading the small amount of data we defined under my docs above can be comfortably done. Oh, comfortably, yes. In a single transaction. In practice, you will find benefit to batch put operations in groups of 1,000 at a time. Following code maps over the docs to generate a single transaction containing one put operation per document, then submits the transaction. Finally, we call the sync function to ensure that their documents are fully indexed and the transaction has been succeeded before we attempt to run any queries. This is necessary because Crux is asynchronous design. Interesting. Okay, let me see here. think I can do Alt-Enter will let you just run a particular form. There you go. Cool. All right, let's see how long that takes. 0.6 of a second, okay. With Crux running and the data loaded, you can now execute a query, which is a Clojure map, by passing it to Crux's Q API, which takes the results of the DB call as its first value. The meaning of this query will become apparent very soon. All right. Oh, Sean says, confirm that you cannot omit the DB ID. Interesting. I think for as much as all of the data log databases are lumped together, they definitely have a lot of divergence. Cool, so what do we get here? A set of vectors?
Title.
Interesting. The level of nesting is interesting.
Yeah, because it's a set of things, and each thing is the columns that you asked it to find.
So this bracket here, like this, the fact that title's in a vector here.
Yeah, so you're asking it to find just title, but you could ask it to find multiple things. And so each result is that list of things you asked it to find.
If you throw an ellipsis after title up there, you should actually just get a set or maybe a vector of all the titles. It'd be interesting to see if that works the same way as Datomic, and probably a space in the middle there.
Like, oops. Like that?
Yeah. We'll see if it works the same way. Oh.
Query did not match expected structure.
Maybe a little different then.
So it did not like the, so this ellipsis, that's something you have in Datomic that you can use?
Yeah, that's right.
In Datalog too. In data script.
Data script too. Oh, okay, cool.
I wonder if you take the brackets out from behind, will that work? Or does it require the brackets around title?
It's not letting me like that?
Yeah. Nope.
No, so it needs to be in the bracket like that. I'm very much resisting the tendency to hit escape and :WQ here.
I keep hitting Command S and trying to save the web page.
Yeah, that muscle memory is strong. Okay. Okay, let's see. To simplify this Crux queue call throughout the rest of the tutorial, we will again define a new queue function that saves us a few characters and visual clutter. Okay, so it makes the Crux node. So all you have to do is pass in the data structure. Okay.
Just a little implicit global mutable state. Nothing to worry about.
Pay no attention to the function behind the curtain. Queries then can be executed trivially, comfortably even. I like it. Okay, cool. All right, EDN. Do we need to go over EDN? Eden? Eden is cool.
Yeah.
So all the queries are written in Eden. The data structure is similar to JSON. Okay. Here is an example query that finds all the movie titles in our example movie database. Key value. Oh, so it's a map, right? So we have the symbol. So the find vector is containing the word symbol. The where vector contains a single query clause, which is also a vector. Crux also supports queries in an alternative vector format.
Oh, so there you go. You can omit the outer nesting.
Yeah, and maybe what was wrong with our ellipsis query was that there needed to be another layer of brackets and then an ellipsis, something like that.
So this, I can put this in up here. Okay, and get the same value. Okay, so they're still wrapped in vectors, even though there's not a vector around title.
Could you try here? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Could you try here
No,
throwing some braces around title and then a space and then ellipsis? Because I think it will work here. I think it was just, there was another layer of wrapping I wasn't familiar with.
So like this?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go. No, still no. All right, I yield. Works differently.
I think it's interesting to see that it's a quoted.
Yeah, because otherwise question mark title would be resolved as a
that's why.
Up.
Undefined.
That's why. It's because it just there's unresolvable stuff inside. Gotcha. I wonder if this works with the bracket around it. I don't know why it wouldn't. Yeah, okay. So it really needs to have and there's something about this editor that makes me not able to, I guess I can highlight it. Wow. There's title. Cool. Okay. Ooh. And not go too far. However, in this tutorial, we will use the map format. It also notes that Crux does not require logic variables to be preceded by a question mark, although you may use this convention if you wish. Yeah, that question mark, that was more familiar to me in my seeing queries from Datomic.
Yeah, I believe it's like an old Prolog convention. I don't know if it predates that.
Oh, interesting. That's cool.
Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm trying to think the Edinburgh syntax. I don't recall question marks being required.
Okay, I've seen it in logic programming, but I don't know if it's strictly required or conventional or where it has its roots.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure isn't this how core logic works with question mark variables, or can you actually use unadorned variables there? I can't remember.
Yeah, it seems like they usually are question mark prefix. Yeah. Is this maybe a mini Canran thing?
I think in core logic you really need the question mark in core logic.
But it does take some getting used to.
Yeah. I like it because then you know that these are fresh variables and they need to be unified in some point. So yeah, I like it because otherwise, yeah.
It's like a way of marking the variables as the ones that are what data you want back.
Yeah. And that they are going to be unified, so it's not a whole bunch. They have to match in different lines on the where, for example. I mean, they are going to be unified.
Oh, 1 second. Jay got dropped. I got to let him back in the waiting room. Hey, there we go. Welcome back, Jay.
Hello.
Okay. So exercises. Ooh. Find all the movie titles in the database.
I have this. You can do a map first, and then the query, where the one with the title, and then you see the vector of titles. If you go up there where we were trying to put the 3 dots.
Where is that again?
At the beginning, when we were doing the Crux /Q Crux DB, and then find title. Remember where we were trying to put the ...
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right. Oh, yeah. So I'll go back up here. Here?
It was right
the
above,
original.
yeah, it was right above the exercises. They had another copy, but I think there.
This one?
But
Like,
oh, yeah, you wanted it in the original. Yeah, there.
Yeah, the original.
So what was the
There, if you write parentheses map first and then the whole, you will see the names of the titles. Yeah, just there at the beginning.
at the beginning here? Sorry.
Yes. Yep. Right at the beginning.
Like this?
No. I mean at the real beginning of the square, before even, yeah, there, before that. The first parenthesis is parentheses, map first.
Oh, map first. Gotcha.
Then
Yeah, I
first.
just take the
Map first, and then copy the whole thing in the inside, and then you'll see the titles. There you go. And now run it, and you'll see the names. Yeah.
It is just data. That's nice. Okay. So find all the movie titles in the database. I think that's all we've been doing, right?
Exactly.
So where was our...
But do you understand why there is a double bracket after the where?
In here?
Why are there 2 brackets?
Because you can have multiple clauses in there.
Exactly.
Yeah, the vector syntax will just kind of find everything following the where up until the next kind of significant keyword, but in the map syntax, it all gets bundled up into one vector.
But if you had multiple things there, what would it mean? It would mean like an and?
It'll do a join across the variables, but yeah, it's sort of like an and.
I think
I can't remember whether they call it a join or not.
Yeah, it's a little more nuanced, you know, than just if you had something there, it would work that way. If there were no unifying variables between the 2 different clauses, then it wouldn't, you know, they wouldn't necessarily have any relationship per se. But often that first element, rather than being an underscore that's ignored, is a variable that is going to get unified across clauses. So if we put !movie right there, it's not going to do anything immediately in this query. We're just going to kind of bind it and throw it away. But if we had another line that said, you know, also said !movie year is 2010 or whatever, then both the title and the year would have to match the same movie, right? Because they get unified into one variable. So then we'd be saying this and that. But there are all kinds of other things you could put in there. You could say not this, you could bind to something else and then join through a yet another variable. There's a lot of flexibility.
So this right here is the entity attribute value.
Exactly.
So it's basically it's saying any entity. This is the attribute, the title, and then I want to, whatever the value would be is what I want to bind, and then that's why it shows up here, is because that's why it comes in the result, is because it's mentioned, it's a variable here instead of a literal.
That's exactly right. Oftentimes they're kind of intermediate variables that you're just using for joins, but you don't necessarily need them in the result set, right? But in this case, we want that title in the result set, so we're putting it in the find clause.
Cool.
Do you think we might be able to try one of those, like what you said with the year?
Yeah, or the director, for example. You can join the director and the title, so you can ask for just the titles of some director, for example.
What would be an example
Yeah,
of a
I
director?
haven't looked at the schema, so I don't even know what we have in here. But okay, that's what the person stuff is.
So person name is what we're going for here.
But
So
we're
you
going to
can-
need something on the movie entity as well.
Yeah, you can put
Movie director.
So like this is a director. So Mel Gibson's no, not Mel Gibson. Richard Donner is a director.
Exactly. So now you put another ID.
Where's my line here?
Yeah, we're going to do something a little more advanced here, which is there's an implicit join that's going to happen here between movie and person, right? And that's one of the really cool things about Datalog is you don't have to specify the joins between quote unquote tables, right? It's implicitly resolved based on the logic programming essentially.
And the names
Okay.
of the variables. The names of the variables will make the join correct. So if you let me see.
So what would we do here then?
So I talk you through this if you want. So we're going to need to bind the movie to a name, right? So we need to, because we want these two clauses to relate to the same movie, right? So where we have that underscore, we're going to have to put something else. So like question mark movie, or just movie, since we're not using question marks, I guess, in this. And so you're going to want to put that in the first position of that second. Yep. Also put movie there. So then we want to say for this movie, there is a certain director, right? So we're going to say movie / director or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah, I assume it's much easier to do this when you have the data next to, you don't have to scroll back and forth.
Yeah. So now, we know that entity that's going to be joined is, some person, right? So here we're going to name that person. We're going to make another variable. Perfect. Okay. And now you want to make a new clause and you want to say, square braces again, person / name or whatever it's called, first name, last name, I don't know. And then you could put that constant value you're looking for in quotes. Yeah.
I will get there eventually. There you go.
And just throwing this out there, but it does resolve these clauses in order that they're listed. So from an efficiency standpoint, the ordering does matter. So like, you want to usually put the most tightly binding, like smallest data set type clause first. This is great for just an example, but if we were doing this in a production environment, we might put that first clause first because we think there's only one person named Richard Donner, most likely, right? Compared to every movie having a title.
Yeah. Okay, I see. So if you do it this way, it's like you're starting at the person and going toward the movie instead of starting at the movie and going toward the person.
That's exactly right. So instead of starting with a giant set of every movie and then joining to every title and then finally scoping it down, we start with one person, right? So logically it doesn't matter, but performance-wise it actually does make a big difference.
And this is a difference between Crux and Datomic, isn't it? Because Datomic has some sort of query planner.
I guess I don't know the extent to which Datomic plans queries now, but I think it still does make a difference what order generally you put the clauses in. But anyway, we may be getting a little ahead of ourselves, but yeah,
well,
let's try running that and see.
No, I think that's a really cool.
Damn.
I assume that's the right answer.
Yeah, any movie buffs who can tell us if this is the right.
Maybe just outed myself as not not a movie buff as much as I like. That is really cool, that the idea of putting the tightest one first. Because it's like everything is indexed, right? Almost. And so because everything is indexed, you want to start with the smallest one first. Huh.
That's right. Yeah, and if you've never used Datalog before, one of the really cool things about this compared to SQL is that, you know, movie and person are essentially different tables for all intents and purposes, and we never had to say, hey, join this one to that one by linking these foreign keys, right? It just figures it out based on the relationship that's implicit in our query. That's right. Super cool.
Okay, so my question to you now is, I want to know the IDs of the movies also. And so do we have to add another line?
Like, it's probably in the find, right?
Yeah, you could just say find. No, you don't need that. Just go to the find and just add movie into that. Movie and title, and that'll give you the entity ID. Well, the entity ID. It'll give you the Crux ID of the movie.
Oh, I see. So the ID is like basically. So what I thought would be is this would be the movie, the whole document. Like
that's kind of both, depending on context, I suppose, right?
Huh.
In a sense, I mean, but really it's the ID.
Cool.
If you've got the ID, you can pull back. You can say Crux entity and get back the document that belongs to that ID.
Okay. Just that's just another function call.
Yeah, with Crux / entity. Can't remember.
Yeah. Cool. And here's the proof that it is actually using those negative numbers as its IDs.
Yeah.
Again, for efficiency, would it should the second and third clauses be swapped as well?
Yeah, I would imagine so.
So all the movies that have that person.
Yeah, because you've already got the person, you only got one.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
Yeah, in the Datomic docs, actually, they suggest this kind of structure, and I think they call it join along. The idea being that each, line to the next is kind of a join, and there should be some unifying variable between each of those lines. So kind of joining along a path, if that makes sense.
So like person and then movie.
You got
so
it.
That gets us from person to title.
We kind of had person, and then on the next line, movie and title, right? We weren't really joining along there.
Huh. Very cool.
Can I ask a question? I was so I've been trying to not think about like the table abstraction. I mean, I've been doing like SQL for decades now, and so when I came across Datalog, I'm trying very hard to not think about entities and rather just thinking about as a large series of joins in one very large table. And I was wondering, as you're doing Datalog, do you think that it's more useful to think of it in terms of tables?
You want me to try to take that?
Yeah. I'm sorry. It was for Cameron. It seems like you have experience in this.
Yeah, I do. It's a good question. I mean, I do find myself sometimes slipping into thinking in terms of tables, especially just kind of like the namespace keyword. They're not really namespaces, but roll with me. Namespace keyword type convention for the keys. You often will find yourself like modeling entities, and all of the attributes in that entity have the same prefix, and you feel like it's a thing that has a certain type, right? But at the end of the day, you definitely shouldn't limit yourself to that kind of thinking, because when you find that you're like modeling something that I guess ontologically, has some set of values that it makes sense to share it here and there. You can put that attribute that doesn't have the same prefix into a different, like, quote unquote type of entity, right? So I think a lot of the time you will kind of think of it like tables, but like you do kind of need to break out of the habit of thinking that's the only way you can do it. Like for instance, on the application I work on most of the time, I have an admin panel that, you know, my team uses, my support staff uses, and that sort of thing. And I decided I wanted to put like tags into that back end so we could tag different entities and say, hey, this is a VIP customer, or this is, I don't know, whatever it is, right? And I wanted to be able to apply these tags to any type of entity, you know? So if you had like movie / tag, you know, and you're thinking in this table sense, it's kind of like, okay, that's definitely going to be a movie, but there's no reason why that couldn't be a higher level concept, right? So your movie entity could also have like app / tag or whatever. Hopefully that makes sense, you know? So you're not tied to like a certain attribute being under a table, right? It's not like that. The database is really an accretion of facts where each is like an entity, an attribute, a value, a transaction, and whether it was added or removed. And that means that, you know, you're kind of not limited in what attributes you can tie to what entities. You can use anything, whatever you want. I don't know if that was helpful, but that's just kind of a broad overview of how it works.
No, that was really clear. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
And then here, just because these things are ID, attribute, and value, maybe we should have had the thing at like movie ID, and then, you know, person ID, and so on.
I just put some chat. If you
Let me try running it.
That will explain the thing a little. I don't know why I have to use this print string thing, because otherwise it will print just vector, which I don't know why, but you know, this will fix it and will print something better.
I see you used like an ID.
So here you just think like triplets, okay? So you say, okay, we have the movie and the attribute title. You have a title and then you have an ID. And using the same ID, you have also another field which goes to director ID. And now if you put director ID on the left side and go to person name, you will have you will go to the director name, and there you go. And if you add one more, line, like for example, I only want the George Miller movies, I'm going to put it in the chat. If you add this one to the end of the where clause, you will get all the movies of George Miller.
So wherever there is a variable instead of a literal, then it makes there be more results. So
yeah, but if you look
Richard
at the
Donner
chat,
is here. Yeah, I see.
So you.
Oop. So this line is then redundant, right?
I mean, that's
you don't need that anymore.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, you do need it because you're still using the director variable in the find.
Yes.
Oh, yes. That's why.
That's kind of crazy, you know, because if you know the answer, why should you ask it? But
that's true. Okay. Any other questions or talks? So we can move on to basic queries. I think we might have already done a little bit more than just the basic. Oh, here we go. So yeah, we talked about this before. So the triples are entity ID. Oh, here. So this is entity ID, not entity, attribute and value. So the Crux data model is based around an atomic collection of facts. These atomic collections of facts are called documents. The facts are called triples. The triple consists of these three things. Although the document it is the document which is atomic in Crux, not the triple. You can think of it as a flat set of triples in this form. So it's just like, which I think this is, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is basically the datomic only has the triples. Well, it also has more than triples, right? It's got like the transaction ID and the something else. There's 5.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. The transaction ID and whether it was an add or a remove.
That's what
So
it is.
when you're looking at kind of the current view of the database, you're kind of just looking at the most recently added value, I mean, or removed actually if it's not there anymore.
Oh, cool. Here, this is, Sean just said in the chat, this is how you would get.
And now I know why I couldn't see anything. You have to press the little triangle on the answer so you can see the vector expanded.
So this is how you see just a particular entity ID.
That gives you the whole entity back as a hash map.
Ah, there we go.
Because you were asking how to do that earlier.
With
Or someone was asking
ID.
how to do it.
Yeah.
Well, it's just
yeah.
the ID. I mean, they're kind of, it's kind of weird that it's picked negative IDs for this. There's no meaning to them other than the 100 series is people and the 200 series is movies.
Yeah, I
It is
didn't
odd.
really understand that schema on demand comment they put above. So maybe that's something we'll learn more about later.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it just
There's
means you don't
also-
have to declare all the keys that go into something, because Datomic requires that you declare all the types,
Oh,
all the entities, and Crux doesn't.
Got it. Okay, I thought it related to those negative IDs, but not so
No.
much. Or
The negative IDs are just, it's just an ID. It just happens to be negative. There's no special meaning to it being negative. It's just an integer.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's kind of confusing for me because in Datalog and other similar things, they usually negative numbers because you are just giving, so you can make your relations on the whole of information that you're putting into the database. Then the actual records get baptized transaction when here it's weird to me that they have these negative numbers. I don't understand. I don't see why negative is better.
yeah, the temp IDs in Datomic carry around like a negative number internally, and then when they're persisted, they have a positive number. So anyway, quirky looking, but
Interesting
may
touch.
not matter.
Yeah.
No.
All right. So here we go. Let's just execute this one. Finds all the entity IDs that have the attribute person name with Ridley Scott. So there's just one. Negative 137. Hey, Ridley Scott. Okay. The simplest data pattern is a triple with some parts replaced with logic variables. It is the job of the query engine to figure out every possible value of each of the logic variables and return the ones that are specified in the find clause. The underscore can be used as a wildcard for the parts of the data pattern that you wish to ignore. You can also lead trailing values in a data pattern. Therefore, the following queries are equivalent. So this is all entities that have a person name attribute, just not knowing what it is at all. It just doesn't matter. Oh, interesting.
Right.
Mm-hmm. It's like having all the records that have that attribute. Yeah, no matter what. And another,
Yeah, that
you don't have to have nulls.
What was that again? You don't have to.
You don't have to have null because
no, gotcha.
the database, because if you don't have the name, you just don't with the null back in place.
But if you actually put a nil there, you won't get any results back. So nil and omitting it aren't the same, because I just tried that.
That's Nate, what you were just saying is a pretty important thing to internalize too. You know, sometimes we think, okay, I want to get all my users and their email addresses from the database. But if you put two clauses for a person, one said I want to bind the name to name and the other said I want to bind, the email to email, you're only going to get records that have both of those values, which can be surprising when when you have a user who hasn't set their email yet and you would prefer to have a nil there, right? It's definitely something to watch out for.
Oh, interesting. So how do you say like, I want some, you would just not specify the value?
Yeah,
but
you would not
specify.
Yeah, right. You would not specify the value, and then there's something that'll probably come up later called pull syntax, where you can say, even though I'm matching this entity, here are other values I want to get back from that entity, and then it will get them whether they exist or not.
Cool. All right, exercise. All the entity IDs of movies made in 1987. What is movie? The year is just a part of the movie, right? Yeah. So movie year. Should be it, yeah.
Get 3 back, yeah.
There you go. Find the entity IDs. Okay, sorry. I've been driving for a while. Anybody else want to be one? Okay. I don't mind driving. I just don't want to. So if someone else wants to be the one.
Yeah, if you need a break, I'm happy to jump in at some point and do a little driving, but if you're good, I'm good.
Well, fine then. In this one, I'm just going to type. Someone else has to answer it. Entity ID and titles of movies in the database.
So this is just going to be a movie title.
Ah, okay. I don't know if this will come back later, but whenever I see a list like this, I'm always like, I feel the need to sort them. Is that usually something you do once the data comes back from the database, or do you sort it in the query? Is there a way to sort it?
Well, if the results are a set,
you could convert it to map.
Yeah, you'd have to change it from a set, which is the result, because sets are inherently unsorted.
Right.
In the Datomic world, you can't sort it server side, which is a little bit of a challenge for pagination and stuff like that. But I think that's true at least, but I don't know if Jex is the same.
Oh, interesting. I mean, it is just data now, so I could just sort it. Yeah, I know that's like
But then you have to get the whole thing client side and then sort it.
Right. That's the.
So I don't have experience with this, but sort of the selling point is the data locality. So I don't know that it matters if you're client side or not. They're kind of the same. Is that your experience, Cameron? Because that's a mind warp for me. But
yeah, it's a little bit nuanced. Like in the Datomic world, there's the client API and there's like the peer API. And the peer API has the kind of locality you're talking about, where it's speaking directly to the data source and then it's caching entities locally. So you can write code as if you have that code, as if you have that data locally, and it's for the most part very performant, which lets you kind of, mix up your kind of processing logic and your querying, and it's super cool. But if you're using like the cloud-based, struggling for the Datomic cloud, okay. If you're using that API, the client API, then it doesn't work that way. So you got to think about it a little differently. Again, like I don't know exactly how Crux differs there. I think we heard earlier that they have both types of APIs, but
you can mix and match the infrastructure as well. So I'm sure it's a depends.
yeah.
Cool.
We've got Stephen Diebold
Yeah.
here from Crux, Jux.
Oh, cool.
So, and he says there is an order by which knows how to spill to disk, but often you'll just sort the results out on the client.
Ah, okay. Well, welcome, Stephen.
Thanks. I'm very sorry I'm late. It was an off by 1 hour time zone wise on my part.
Well, cool. Are you actually joining us from England, like from the other side of the?
No, I actually am the only Jux employee who lives in Canada, so I'm on CDT. The math shouldn't have been that hard, actually.
Oh, no.
Sometimes it gets worse when you get closer to the Pacific, but I'm close by.
Cool. Well, I just didn't want it to be, you know, whatever in the middle of the morning.
Yeah,
Cool.
I think it would be 3 a.m. if I were joining from the UK, so that would be a big ask.
That would be all the more impressive. So
We'd be very
cool.
flattered.
More than we already are.
That's right.
I would
Okay.
like to ask you something. So some of us we have used in the past a little or a lot the Datomic and the negative IDs. At the beginning, they seemed like the ident function in Datomic, where you usually put negatives before the transaction, and then everything that goes into the database will get baptized by the transactor with a positive number. I wonder why in the example are you using negatives, or just so that you don't scare the Datomic fellows?
It was explained in the chat.
What's the idea?
By the way, that was explained in the chat. You scroll up, but it was basically the original Crux. The original tutorial had negative numbers in, so they were just kind of kept.
Okay.
Oh, the
Yeah,
original
actually,
Learn Datalog Today one. Interesting.
Yeah, I think that Jeremy just kept that as is, but given that it's a confusing point for a few people, I've made a note and we can change that so that it's easier for people to understand, because the negative integers are a bit peculiar, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, cool. Jacob says Crux ID can be keyword, string, integers, longs, UUID, URI, URL, and maps. Oh, interesting. You can have a map as the value. Huh.
So
okay.
yeah, as long as they are unique, they're fine. Okay, is that right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, cool. All right, so find the name of all the people.
I wonder, is there a function like a native way of like in a way that you don't have to baptize it? Identity, like in a database, sometimes you just say, okay, this column is an identity, and when you insert registers get baptized by the database, so you don't have to worry about the number, or you really don't care. Or you just go with a UUID or something like that. What's the best practice on the Crux team?
Yeah, so in the systems that I've built using Crux, I just use UUIDs. So that way you do always have to choose the ID yourself. Okay. So it's not up to Crux, but you can just use a UUID and you'll be safe. So that's usually the sanest option if you just want to completely avoid collisions.
Okay. And these IDs are unique database wide, or per
Correct. Yeah.
not per attribute.
No, database wide. There's so there's no they're unique per entity. So it's important to remember that Crux. I think there's a comment in the text here a little bit up, which mentions that Crux is atomic around entire documents, not EAV triples. So your entity ID is unique across the entire database for each individual entity. And so the reason for that is kind of multifold, but the sort of core of why that's the case is because Crux has no schema per se. So any given entity can represent anything, which means that you can't restrict the uniqueness of the IDs to any sort of set in the database.
Okay, I got it. Yeah. Okay, good.
Interesting. So if you have like, this person ID's ID, alien is -214, you can't have a director who's ID 214 because then those would collide. Interesting. Cool. Looks like there is support for ordering and pagination. Thanks, Chase, for that link. All right. So all the name and all the people in the database. I think we've done this one already.
But this time you have to provide the find clause.
Oh man.
What could it be?
What could it be? Okay, so then where that nested vector is, once you have more than one thing in the nested vector, it's not so bad, but just one clause is kind of trippy. Person name. Uh-oh.
What's the name?
I gotta have name at the end. I gotta bind the name. Went too far. Lots of people. Cool. Ah, there we go. All right.
What would happen if I was manually creating my entities and I accidentally duplicated the ID?
So are you asking, like, if you put two documents, one after the other, well, at two separate times, and the second document accidentally had the same ID as the other document?
So we only have like, okay, maybe I'm not understanding this correctly, but like I was looking at our document, the cell up on top, and I noticed that you can, I noticed that there was like a manual entry for like tying a person to like an ID, and I thought that was like a assignment. But I guess it's not. Like I guess the tutorial is structured in a way where if I'm looking at the person name, that their crux.db/id is correctly assigned to whatever it's supposed to be assigned to.
Right. Yeah. So essentially, this tutorial only really covers querying. And so there's a suite of transaction behaviors or transaction operations. And the one that you would be concerned about is put, or concerned with is put. So someone has already put these documents for you into the underlying database. But if you did, let's take that instance. I mean, this is a little out of band, so I'll try not to derail the conversation. But let's say you put user with user ID 1, and then you put
product.
Let's product with ID 1, because all the IDs are keyed as essentially just Crux DB ID. The product would overwrite the user. Crux doesn't know that they are of separate types. It doesn't do any type validation for you. There is no schema on write. It's possible to do schema on write. So in particular on the project where I use Crux, I actually have gone out of my way to be a little more datomic-y about my schema on write. And it can be, it's sort of a trade-off, right? It's a bit of a hassle to do that, but it saves you from those sorts of silly mistakes. And the project that I'm doing is very kind of boring, CRUD, Rails, Django type of thing. So it's valuable to me to avoid those sorts of mistakes. But in general, Crux doesn't care about your schema on write. So you can make those sorts of mistakes if for some reason you fat finger it.
Yeah, and the attributes of both entities are merged, or the new entities gets on top of the other one?
It would just overwrite it completely. It essentially gives you a new time.
Yeah, I just overwrit one of them by putting a developer record, a document in on the same ID as an existing person, just curious to see what it did. And so, yeah, you just silently get it overwritten.
And so that initial document is gone unless you noted, check for that issue.
Yeah, so
it's still
not gone,
there if
sorry.
you look for the time.
Yeah.
The current version of the document has changed. You can get an earlier version of the document.
Okay, that's unexpected to me. I would have expected a merge, but I understand why, I think.
Since the atomic unit is the document rather than the attributes, kind of atomic-esque. Okay.
That's very different than the atomic, no?
Does that mean that if I wanted to call back using the timestamp, I could look at the previous value because it's still there? Like if I was, okay, got it. Thanks.
There's a useful function entity history that would just dump it out.
Yeah, and that is very different from Datomic. I realized I was muted a moment ago when I was trying to say this, but in the Datomic world, the atomic element is kind of the attributes, right? So it would merge because they would all be asserted essentially, right? But since the document is the atomic element, I guess that's not the case here. It would eliminate those old attributes.
Okay,
Again, eliminate is the wrong word because it's still in there.
yeah, no, but that's a lot clearer to me now. Thank you.
And one question: do we have something like the operation like as of, like in the atomic, where you say, okay, give me the database, how it looks, the database, and you pass a timestamp, so you can go back in time?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
I won't bother going into details because I think we'll probably find out more about those sorts of things in this tutorial. Or there's another tutorial on the website that goes into a lot more kind of temporal query stuff.
Okay, good, perfect. Just so that we can sleep.
Cool. And I just wanted to note that in the chat that the ordering of the clauses doesn't matter as in Datomic. It's because Crux has a query planner, so it will plan appropriately and optimize probably for you.
That's very nice.
Yeah. So that you can order it the way your human mind likes to use it instead of the way the computer needs to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is it what I thought? That's good to know.
Yeah, so in the previous chapter, we looked at data patterns. Vectors were within the where vector. There can be many data patterns in a where clause. So the important thing to note here is that the logical variable E is used in both data patterns. When a logical variable is used in multiple places, the query engine requires it to be bound to the same value. Therefore, this query will only find movie titles from movies made in 1987.
I think there is one very important thing to mention. If you go back to the database where we inserted the thing, you can see that sometimes it makes no difference if you give an entity ID or a vector of entities IDs. So the relation one to many, it's handled
Here.
automatically.
Yeah.
Which is very nice. But you have to be aware of it.
Right, because you can specify just a single ID for movie cast and it will find any movie where that's in that list.
Exactly. Yeah, but if you have a couple of them, you will find both of them in tuples.
Nice.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I think it's nice, you know, it's super flexible, but you have to be aware of it or you will shoot on your foot.
Yeah. And that's not fun.
No. Yeah,
Let's see
movie
where
cast.
here.
And then, yeah.
There we go. Oh, I don't know. My browser is getting tired, apparently. Come on. Here we go. So we could have written it this way. Oh, here you go. Crux ignores the user provided clause so that the query engine can optimize query execution. Thus, you could do it in that order. Okay. In both cases, the result will be exactly the same. Let's say you want to find out who started a lethal weapon. You need 3 data patterns for this. First one finds the entity ID with movie with lethal weapon as the title. Using the entity ID at M, we can find the cast members with the data pattern. And then P will now be the entity ID of the person. We can grab the actual person name with that. And that's the whole query.
Very nice. And cast is a vector.
What's that again?
Movie cast is a vector.
Oh, I see. Here.
So you will find on any of them. This is very nice. It's you know, I like it.
All right.
Should we pick someone to answer some of these?
Yeah, someone who's not the person typing. Yeah, if you'd like, you can just put it what you would like in the chat, and I can copy and paste it, so we don't have to do the whole backseat typist thing.
Yeah.
Anybody? All right. I'm gonna pick someone.
Okay. What's the question right now?
All the movie titles from 1985.
Okay. Find movie titles made in 1985. Okay.
Oh, Jacob. Here we go, Jacob. Copying, pass.
Yeah.
That's good. All right. What year was Alien released? Ah, Sean Corfield. Oops.
I only pasted the query part, not the entire call.
Cool. $19.79. Yep. Good to see you, Chase. Yeah, I'll post the video up on YouTube some point in time. Oh, Cameron has to take off too. Good to see you, Cameron. Oh, wait, maybe not. I think Cameron is sticking around. He's just saying bye. Okay. Who directed RoboCop? Jay, Philippe?
Say I have the query if no one else has it.
And then maybe someone else could be working on the directors who have directed, who have directed Arnold Schwarzenegger. So you want the name of the director where Arnold Schwarzenegger is in the cast. Oh. It's kind of cool. You can just like, because of the relationships, you just kind of wander through the database and you state all the things that have to link together, and it just does all the work for you.
Yes.
It's like you only have to do the where part of the SQL without having to do all the table joins.
And you can have and you can put a function there. For example, if you want to ask for the titles between this year and the next year, one of the clauses of the where clause can be a function.
Nice.
Like up here, like if we wanted all the ones since 1985.
Yes.
So like a function literal in here, kind of, you mean, or?
No, you know, not exactly like that, but you put the year there, like y, and then in another clause, and you have to put the variable there, like y, and then in another, yeah, exactly. And I don't know exactly the syntax here, but you can put a function that say, okay, you're going to receive y, and then y must be between this number and that number with Clojure. That can be done. Let me. And you can go and make anything there. Like you can really go crazy on it. Let me see.
Cool. Let me see. Jay's got an answer for RoboCop. Who directed RoboCop? I trust that's the right answer. I don't have Wikipedia up right now. And Dorab with the directing. I want to look at this one a little longer. Directing Arnold Schwarzenegger in a movie.
Oh, there's this extra space
there. I think it's the special quotes. I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. I'm going to try to attempt to spell Schwarzenegger on the air.
That's the IDs, but it'd be nice to have their names. So
we just need another line here with the director.
Yeah. Person name.
Yeah, person name, and then name, and find name instead of dear.
Cool. Nice. Very cool. Oh yeah, there's answers here. You should put the answers a little bit farther away from the questions. It's easy to accidentally scroll.
Too tempting.
Tempting, that's a good way of. Oops. All right, parameterized queries. Oh, it would be great if we could reuse this query to find movie titles for any actor, not just Sylvester Stallone. We can use this possible with an in clause, which provides the query with input parameters, much in the same way that function or method arguments do in your programming language. Here's that query with an input parameter for the actor. Oh, I see. I was looking here and I couldn't find anything. It's right here. Here, let's just, I think I still have Mr. Schwarzenegger in my paste buffer. That looks appropriate. So this is just an extra argument to the queue function. I didn't know our convenience function. Where's
those
that
optional
defined?
args at the end. For the
definition.
definition.
I missed that. Where is it? Where is it?
You've gone past it.
Okay.
Because apply.
So I can, okay, gotcha. So that's, okay. Oops, cool. I guess I can go over here and use the anchor. The query takes one argument, name, which will be the name of the actor. The above query is executed like this, where the query is just the query we saw and the DB is the database value. You can have any number of inputs to a query. The above query, the input variable name is bound to the scalar, a string in this case. There are 4 different types of input: scalars, tuples, collections, and relations. Interesting. Oh, cool. We're going to those. Note that the implicit first argument $sign is also available should you ever be needed. It's just the value of the database itself. You can use this in conjunction with more advanced features like subqueries and custom Clojure predicates. Oh, interesting. A tuple input is written as name, such as name, age, can be used when you want to destructure an input. Let's say you have the vector James Cameron, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and you want to add this as input to find all the movies where the 2 people collaborated. In this case, you could just as well use 2 distinct inputs instead. So I guess this just depends on, so this just saves you like the apply, I guess.
Well, it's more to do with what format your data comes in. I mean, if your single argument to the query is a pair of director and actor, you'll destructure it. If you've got multiple arguments, you wouldn't have the destructuring.
Right.
Yeah. Collections, we finally get the ... syntax that I think Philippe was on about. Yeah.
You can use collection destructuring to implement a kind of logical OR. You want to find all the movies directed by either James Cameron or Ridley Scott. It's initially bound. So, okay, sorry. The director logic variable is initially bound to both James Cameron and Ridley Scott. So does it run the query twice? I mean, it's interesting. I
would assume it doesn't run twice, but it
well,
basically lets it match
inside
with the variable bound multiple times.
Yeah, it doesn't run the whole thing twice. It just kind of binds to that subset and then runs the other clauses.
Yeah, let's hope it's optimized.
Interesting. Cool. Relations. I said tuples are the most interesting and powerful of input types since you can join external relations with the triples in your database. As an example, let's consider a relation with tuples, movie ID, box office earnings. Okay. Let's assume those are in dollars, I guess. Let's use this data and the data in the database to find box office earnings for a particular director. Wow, look at that. So this just adds another relation that you can use in your matching. Is that the?
It's just using the output, right?
Yeah, just values, not so much a relation, I think.
Oh,
Okay.
because title is going to bind to each of those elements.
Maybe it is.
But box office is just going to bind to the number you passed in. No?
But I would assume you can put
Oh.
box office down here some as a value if you want to match it. Like you want to. Right now, box office is only used in the result, but I assume you can use box office down here if you wanted to match it up against some
Yeah,
other.
Box
You
office
definitely
isn't.
could.
Box office isn't in the original data, is it?
No. But I mean, yeah, but if there was something in the original data, like, budget, you wanted to know if it was bigger than the budget or something. All the movies.
I think the idea a little is like this title, it's bound externally to this box office, which is not in the database. So you can, it's like adding some little information for this query, especially.
Right.
Which is very nice. You can have some information from another source, perhaps the user or something, or another database or something.
Yeah,
and here you can mix it.
That's what I'm wondering too. Can this relations argument take another query, for example?
Another what?
Can this relations, I'm gonna call it an argument for, I hope that's the right way to refer to it, but can it take another query, for example?
It's just data you're passing in. So, I mean,
having another thing here with more data.
You mean like the results of another query?
Yeah, like the results of another query, right?
Oh,
sorry.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same structure as the result of a query.
Yeah, and Nate was right here. It's definitely a relation. It's not just list of values, because otherwise it would make no sense to put it in the in the find, but not in the body, right? Like we're pulling it back because it's tied to the title. So you could do this to join two different databases, for instance, right? Like get the results from one, join it to another, and maintain the relations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to do some cleanup? Because I'm not quite sure that the formats of the queries that we've been seeing kind of match this particular format.
Well, they are sets of lists, so it's the same sort of structure. It would be interesting to know if you could make that a set.
You mean make like
change the list to a set?
Change the So
I think it will work.
Right, but it might just call seek on it at the end of the day.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I actually think that there's been some debate about this recently. I'm not entirely sure. Excuse me, if a set of relations can actually be passed in as a set or not, but you can try it.
It looks like it worked. At least we got the same
Hooray.
answer. Let's see. This is the director. We're in the relations section. What's another director? Oh man, we need a movie that's, let's just. But it looked like it worked. Yeah, it looked like it probably just has, it ends up being just a seek.
I think it's safe to say that in general, where you see a vector being used as a set, as this one is, you can generally use a set instead of a vector. I think that 9 times out of 10 people tend to use a vector as a sort of data format only because it's kind of attractive, I guess, for lack of a better description. But there are probably edge cases where you want to be a bit careful about using a set where examples tend to use vectors. But in general, the system will understand sets where things are actually sets under the hood.
Cool. As I sit here, making sure all the white spaces are correct. All right, exercises again. Find movie title by year. Find all movie titles where the actor and the director have worked together. Huh. I feel like we should have some Jeopardy music right here. Any takers? We're working still?
Guys, I think I will have to leave you. But thank you for everything. It's been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, we're actually at 8 o'clock. That was that beeping on my side was the alarm.
Yeah, here's 10 o'clock. So well, thank you, and see you in another.
Maybe
chance.
I don't know. Maybe we can pick this up next time, or I don't know about you guys, but I probably will continue on this. This has been very interesting, very mind expanding, especially with the logical stuff.
Yeah, I agree. In the next section comes the predicates. So yeah. They are there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool then. Should we call it a day then?
Sounds good.
Oh,
I think
nobody has to leave because of me. So I'm just saying thank you very much. I appreciate it being with you.
It's good to see you.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
I also would like to. I think it's been a good chat, but I think we good again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come again.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Philippe. I was going to say, so I actually think that Jeremy has, he has a few more exercises queued up that he wants to add to this tutorial. So he wanted to expand the original Learn Datalog tutorial a bit with some of the features that Crux has that Datomic and Datascript do not. So temporal queries and things like that.
Yeah.
So if you folks were to revisit this, we could probably schedule it in such a way that those exercises were there for you to play with before you tried to tackle the second half, if you want.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
We meet the second Wednesday of the month, so we won't meet again till what's the second Wednesday in August, the 11th. That'll be our next. Would that work okay? I mean, I'm not asking you to. We are recording this, so this is everyone's going to see your answer. You know.
Yeah, this is me committing Jeremy to some work that he hasn't agreed to. But maybe I have to pick it up if he's too busy. I think a month should probably be plenty of time for us to get a few more exercises there. So I think everyone would be quite happy to have some stuff for you to play with. I do also want to note, I put it in the text chat, but if you do want to play with some of the other more peculiar queries, the other tutorial is also on Nexternal. So it follows the same sort of format or a similar sort of format of question answer. And it does some temporal stuff a bit if you don't want to wait a month to see some of those.
The space adventure. Cool.
Yeah, space adventure. So Space Adventure actually does more, it does actually have like transactions. So it does things like creating, deleting, and evicting data from the database and things like that, which the Crux Datalog does not, because the Crux Datalog tutorial is exclusively querying. So then you'll get both sides of the coin with Space Adventure. But
cool. Well, thank you.
That could be September.
Yeah. Thank you for providing this as a tutorial, because I think the like being able to read a little and then like intersperse code and words together really, I think, is a really good way of learning. Also a really good way of learning is doing it with some friends like this. So this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, actually, if you go and look at the original Learn Datalog Today tutorial, there are many contributors to that, and I think that they deserve most of the thanks, because they've been working on that for quite a long time. And that was, I had actually forgotten about it. That was how I learned Datomic many years ago. So that was my first exposure to Datalog. So those folks have really done a great job, and it was very sweet of them to let us kind of transmogrify their tutorial and actually relicense it. So a huge thanks to them, because that was really great.
Cool. I wanna bring up another database, Asami, if anybody would have experience with that. I'm gonna dig into that as well. So it's also a Datomic query, Datalog query format. And a good book. It's been years, but the Reason Schemer is really a nice mind-bending little book about logic programming as well.
Cool. All right. Oh yeah, yeah. Cool. All right. Then I think thank you everyone for coming and
Thank you.
and being and contributing and collaborative learning and being patient with me as I read. And we'll meet again in a month on the 11th of August. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for running it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah,
It's
thanks.
really
Yeah,
cool to see everyone.
Thank you so much.
It's a lot of
Thank
fun.
you all. Thank you for coming, Steve, too. All right.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.